Going on, guys? Time for the weekly shop update. I wanted to show you a handful of projects I've been working on this week, and then maybe we'll talk about some lessons I've been learning as well. But before we get into that, let me hammer around and show you real quick. I did finish my machine skates. I think I mentioned getting ready to make these in the last update, as well as also mentioning, the intention of moving some of these machines and workbenches around. And, even with a couple of guys, you're not easily moving something like this knee mill, surface grinder, lathe. Any one of these weighs several hundred pounds apiece. And, there's ways to do it by yourself. Obviously that's what I'm doing. But there's also more efficient and safer ways. And in order to do that, I needed these skates. And instead of buying a pair, I figured I could build 4 of them for what probably 1 or maybe 2 of them cost. And it gave me a little bit of a project and something to, spend some time on anyway. So as I think I mentioned already in the last update, I went to a local fab shop. They've got a scrapyard out back. You can pick through any of their drops or other scrap that they get in from different projects, and pretty much pay scrap prices. So I got a piece of 6-inch channel as well as some other stuff for some other projects, and cut that down and made these. And basically they're just 6x6 bases. They've got some 3/4-inch threaded rod for axles, front and back, and then the wheels are just some doubled up 6204 bearings. And actually also machined some threaded bushings to go over the 3/4-inch thread, because there is a discrepancy between the outer diameter of the 3/4 10 all thread and the 20 millimeter inner diameters of the 6204 bearings. So I had some 1/2-inch steel pipe. It actually ends up being the perfect size that you can drill and tap the inner diameter relatively easily for the 3/4 10 to go over the all thread. Then you've still got a little material left over. You can turn down the outer diameter to the 20 millimeters. So I made bushing for each set of wheels. And then I just put a nut to keep them all captive on there. And they work pretty well. Roller bearings aren't the most ideal wheel that there is. It's really not what they're intended for. But for this application, it'll work just fine. I'm not moving anything that weighs 5,000 or 6,000 pounds. I think the heaviest machine I have is maybe 10 to 1,200. So, with that distributed over 4 and, 2 bearings per wheel, the weight distribution or the forces that they'll see is going to be relatively small and shouldn't be a problem at all. So that's that. I also made a little toe jack adapter, which is something I kind of just came up with as I went along. I didn't really see anybody else make anything like this. The jacks, I found some pictures online before I made those. But this I kind of just came up with by myself. You got a little toe hook here, and then I've got a little piece of plate there that hooks over the top of my bottle jack. It's just a little 6-ton cheapie. And this top here is maybe the unique part. It's a adjustable rail that slides in or out. And that just adds some additional lateral support so that when this engages into the machine, as my jack is pushing on this part, it creates kind of a fulcrum or a pivot point, potentially. And without this, this would want to kick forward and possibly kick the jack backwards. So with this, this can be adjusted into the side of the machine and keep this perpendicular to the ground or parallel to my jack, keeping it vertical and keeping it from kicking out or pitching forward. So, and the reason it's adjustable, like this machine, the bottom kicks out from the side a little bit. Same with the mill. My little lateral support point would be several inches in from where I'm lifting. This lathe is a different shape. So that just adds some adjustability for different shapes and sizes of machines. And it actually works quite well. There's actually not that much force as far as how much it's wanting to kick forward, it's a relatively small amount of force, compared to what you're lifting. But, just a couple of little bolts to keep it from sliding in or out works just fine. And I've already played around with it with the surface grinder, and everything works great. So that was one project. Now another one I did, it's been a long time coming. I made a new pedestal or a new stand for my 2x72 grinder that I built and designed some time ago. And, since building that, I always had this little cheap, flimsy stand there. It's really not made for that. This looks much more appropriate. And it's pretty basic, it's just a couple pieces of angle for the legs, or, to give me something to bolt to the floor with. And then I've got just a little plate on top that it bolts down to. And I went ahead and mounted the VFD right to the pedestal. Now, originally I did have a little aluminum bracket that kind of kicked it out and kind of canted the face upwards so I could adjust it and see it a little easier. Unfortunately, that broke, where I had bent the angle into the bracket. The aluminum was weakened, and as I was taking it off and moving it around, it started to crack and break. So I scrapped that. I'll have to make something else, maybe a little better in the future, but for now I just mounted it right to the pedestal and it should work fine. And then I'm also working on a little accessory stand, which I've still got to play around with. I'm debating if I want to put wheels on it. Also have a couple of other little brackets or hooks I need to make for different things. For instance, I've got this little sharpening clamp I made, and this is actually something I recently machined as well. Just a little stopper, to go back and forth and pivot on the guide rail. So I made that last night, actually. I want to make a little fork or like a little hook bracket for that. I could stick it in here, but I think it'd be nicer if I could hang it up. Or at least make a hanger for this and, keep that there. I may even add a secondary, like, upper shelf that I can move up and down. There's just a few different things to play with there. But I definitely want to add a couple more of these. I need at least one or two more for the other tool arms and accessories I have. Eventually I'll get some more small wheels. I'll get a little bracket or adapter for that mounted on there. And probably need some additional hangers or brackets for like all my little work rest accessories and things like that. And that may even end up being something like a shelf that I put on the top too, instead of dedicated hangers. So like I say, I'm still playing with that design, but this will definitely keep things a little more organized and, at the ready for swapping out. So something I've needed for a while as well. Now, one other little quick project I did today, I added a second light switch for these lights. Normally I power them on and off from over there. So I turned that into a three-way switch and added that just so I can grab them as I'm coming in or leaving the shop, without having to go through all that rigmarole over there. And that's just a little convenience job. And I think that's about it for making stuff this week. I'm still in the process of getting the shop organized, still cleaning it up a little bit as we go along. And, just trying to organize my time a little better, between projects that make me money and projects that make me sane. So, some of these projects I've been putting off, thinking, well, if I do this, if I make this, I can make money. If I, say make something like this, it's not making me any money. But then again, it's adding efficiency, it's adding sanity. It's worth it. And I'm starting to realize that, that's one of the lessons, talking about lessons I've learned this week. That's one thing I've learned. Sometimes you got to step back and you got to do things that maybe you don't want to do or that you've been putting off. Because in the long run, they do pay off and they do pay dividends, like making a better stand. I could have used my machine like it was till the end of time, but I didn't like it. I wasn't happy with it. This brings me joy. It does make the machine a little nicer. It makes it a little more sturdy. Is it going to make me a better knife maker? Probably not, but it's still worth it in my opinion. So, I took the time, I did it, and I don't regret it. So, same with this. Same with these little machine jacks. But, that kind of rolls me into my other life lesson here. Being penny wise and, dollar stupid or dollar foolish. That's something I guess I've learned many times in my 36 years on this earth. And I got to say, sometimes, I'll go ahead and flip this around. Sometimes it makes sense to go the cheap route. Sometimes you don't have the money, but you need the tool or, whatever it is. It makes sense in that instance rather than, borrowing or overextending yourself, on a loan or whatever. Sometimes it makes sense, get the cheap one that you can deal with or work with, initially, and then use that, or, in the meantime, figure out some other means or methods to save and scrape the money, down the line to get the better, high quality tool. A car is a good example. Not all of us can go out and buy a $40,000 truck, $50,000 truck, or, insert whatever model car and price you want. But maybe you can scrape $500-600 together and go get some little clunker or beater, that'll get you from point A to point B, take you to a job and make that money, to save up for a car payment or, even more ideally, the final price of the car. And, you can kind of scrimp and scrape along, drive that beater, and then get the one you want down the road. Now, then again, in some cases, that little beater may nickel and dime you to death. And, by the time you would have been able to save another $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 for a car, you might have put 5 or 6 back into that beater you just, tried to save money on. So I guess there's a line, one way or the other. Like I say, sometimes it makes sense to spend a little extra money up front, and sometimes it doesn't. But this week I definitely learned a couple instances. If you guys watched my Instagram, I made one. It probably got as many comments as I've received on any post here in recent history. Several comments, guys kind of laughing about it or, maybe saying, wow, that's a statement, or, recommending another type of drill bit. But what happened was I bought some cheap drill bits, trying to save a buck. Anybody that's went shopping for drill bits know, for a good quality set, if you're buying a fractional set or even the letter or number set, on average, you're probably spending close to $100 for a decent fractional set, 29 or 30 drill bits. They're going to cost you some money, especially even if you get like the full set, the 115 piece with your letters, numbers, and fractionals. Minimum price you're going to pay for a very high quality set is probably going to be at least $200 to $250. In many cases, $300 to $500, if not over $1,000. And that's a lot of money, especially for somebody like me as a hobbyist to spend on drill bits, especially when there's so many cheaper options out there. And, there's a lot of import tooling that I buy that I'm actually impressed with. And in my opinion, works as well, maybe even in some cases better than some of the pricier options, like for CNC machinist, Amana Tools is a very high quality brand. It's expensive though, and for hobbyists like me, it doesn't make sense to pay $150, $200 for like a surfacing bit when I can buy something that'll do the same job for $20. So in some cases, the import tooling, it does make more sense for guys like me. I'm not making that much money on these jobs, or I'm learning. Yeah, in that case, cheap tool bits, cheap tooling, cheap drill bits makes sense. But then you've got some of these jobs I'm working on. For instance, I'm trying to drill a hole through some hot rolled mild steel, and I'm just burning up bit after bit after bit, even with a good quality cutting fluid, good feeds and speeds. The drill bits wobble from the get-go. They were just junk. And, that $30, where I thought I was saving money, if I'd have put that to a quality set of drill bits, that would have got me halfway there, probably to a good fractional set. And I ended up throwing more than half those bits in the garbage. I broke several of them. I doled the rest of them. Some of them I'd never even used. I just threw them out. In that case, I was penny wise and dollar stupid. And, this week I actually used the proceeds from a knife I just sold. The inlaid knife, by the way, it just sold. Use that money to buy a much higher quality set of drill bits. And I'm excited for those to come in. Now, the other thing, I tried to save some money on the surface grinder. Recently swapped out the lead screw and the nut. Tried to save some money. And granted, this is an older machine. Sometimes you can't always find parts for it. So I kind of rigged something up. I bought an aftermarket lead screw and an aftermarket brass lead nut and machined it to fit what was already in this machine. It works. It's better than it was, but it's still not as smooth as I want it to be. So I actually got on eBay and found a used assembly here, which is what I kind of cobbled together myself. And the final price on this was about $65 shipped. I think the lead screw and the lead nut, I think I paid $50 for. I could still use that lead nut, or at least the lead screw, for something else. So that's not a complete waste, but it was still a waste of time and a waste of money. Not that it didn't work, but it wasn't to my satisfaction. This, you're risking a little bit because it is used, but it's in fine condition. The fit and the tolerances are infinitely better than what I previously had, and probably even better than what I made it when I fixed it. So, I should have just tried this from the get-go, and, there's always that risk that I could have bought that and it could have been completely wallered out and, completely useless to me. There was no guarantee. In this case, the seller must have known what he had. He was an honest guy, he or she, and, was asking a fair price for a good piece of equipment, that came off of another machine, or maybe it was a spare part from another machine. It does look like maybe it was in something, but it's very lightly used, and tolerances are great on it. So, like I say, there's risk from both ends, going cheap or, buying outright, the best that you can buy. And sometimes you just don't have that option. But, now I'm just rambling on, I guess. I just wanted to kind of throw that out there. Don't be penny wise and dollar stupid if you can help it. In some cases, if you can't, that's fine. But just kind of think about it a little harder next time you're trying to save a buck. I come across this all the time with myself. Every once in a while it's worth spending, that initially 2 or 3 times, more expensive price for something that's going to last you, or, that you're not going to be regretting when you bought the cheaper one instead. So that's all I'm going to say about that. I guess that'll be it for this week's update. Like I say, we try to keep these under 20 minutes. I'd like to keep them even shorter than that, but that's where we ended up this week. So thanks for watching, guys. If you liked anything you saw, have any questions, please leave a comment. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll try to keep these up for you. And if you don't like these, let me know that too, and maybe I won't have one every week. But that's it for this week, guys. Thanks for watching.